Hey guys, it's Beardie. I'm here with my December wrap up. Yes. It's the last month of 2021. Let's discuss. For stats, I read 14 books, which was amazing, and it's a total of 4,699 pages worth, which is 151.58 pages per day and 235.46 pages per book. Then with formats, I'm really happy. I read 6 books. I owned 5 galleys from NetGalley and 3 library books. For star ratings, we're all over the place. We have 2 1 stars, 2 2 stars, 5 3 stars, 2 4 stars, and 3 5 stars, which range my average rating to a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then for age ranges, I have 1 middle grade, 5 young adult books, 3 new adult books, and 5 adult books. And then for genre, this is a very short list of genres, which is very atypical, but oh well. We have 8 contemporaries, 2 fantasies, and 4 historical fictions. So yeah, let's do a quick mid-month recap. So again, that full video is linked in the eye above any of these corners, but also in the description. First off, we have Fools in Love by Rebecca Potus and Ashley Herring Blake, which I gave 45 stars to as a gallery from NetGalley. Then we have Legion by Chilika Gawa, which I gave 35 stars to, and it's a book I got from the library, but I already had to return, so therefore the picture. Then I read The Falling in Love Montage by Sierra Smith, which I gave 35 stars, and this one I started my romance reading vlog with, so that will also be linked in the eye and down below. Then we have From Velvet Ash by Jenna Armentrout, which I gave 45 stars and is again part of that romance reading vlog. Then we have The Score by Elle Kennedy, which I gave 35 stars and is a book I got from the library and I had to return. And then we have On the Way to the Wedding by Edith Cohn, which I gave 55 stars. So those were all the books I talked about in my mid-month wrap-up. So let's discuss all the other books I read, because there's a plenty more. First off, we have The Chase by Elle Kennedy, which I gave 5 stars. This is the first book in the Briar You series, which is a spin-off series of the Off-Campus series. They're all like standalone romances, so it isn't necessarily necessary to read these books in order. I'm not doing that. So yeah, but in this one we follow Summer, who is the sister of Dean, who is the main character in The Chase, which I read earlier this month. And she has had a crush on this guy named Colin for a while, but he has never really seemed interested in her. And now she has to go to YU because she got kicked out of her other college, and she hasn't any place to live, so her brother arranges for her to move in with Colin and his friends into this house where Dean used to live and the off-campus guys used to live. And we also follow Colin, who has also had a crush on Summer for a while, but has tried to push it out of his head as he is pretty close friends with her brother. And also he just doesn't think they would match well, and she would be interested in him. And to further complicate things, as they're now living together, one of his other friends, who is also living in this house, is also heavily crushing on Summer. It is a very angsty romance, completely based off of miscommunication and not letting the other person talk, which I just despised. I think Summer and Colin both were very insufferable characters in different ways, but also in the same way, as, like I said, they just don't know how to communicate with people, which is very frustrating, especially considering it's a romance, and if you can't even talk to the person you're I'm supposed to believe you're gonna spend the rest of your life with, then what the fuck, you know? And they're also both very self-centered, which is especially prevalent in the conflict with the guy who also has a crush on Summer, where both of them are just very unaware of the pain they're causing this person, just because we're happy, he should be happy for us because he's our friend, you know, he's very childish for being hurt. And dude, you literally just played with his emotions like it was nothing. It's very annoying for you to think that you're the star of the universe. Also, Colin has this aspect where he's yeah, I'm a jock, but also I love gaming, so I'm secretly a nerd and my life is difficult because of that. Dude, this was written in 2018, I believe. Gaming has been cool for years now. Especially annoyed me because in the off-campus books, we have seen several times that all the hockey players play games and join him when he's gaming. In this book we also see football players be into gaming. So like, why the fuck would you being a jock and gaming be different all of a sudden? It's so annoying, and so it shows that he just has like a complex of wanting to be different rather than actually being different, like wanting to be an outsider, actually being one. Like I said, the romance in the work for me, they didn't know how to communicate. I feel like their entire romance was just like sexual attraction and fighting, and that's like all they did, and I feel like that isn't a healthy basis for a romance, yet this book is supposed to believe that it is. And then I also just was bored a bit throughout this book. I feel like the plot wasn't really as interesting. I feel like this tried to do a lot of things, as in trying to have like feminist conversations, like this generally somewhere in a monologue goes on a lot of feminist rants who then just do actions completely opposite to that, which yeah, very annoying. So yeah, I wasn't a fan of this, but I am kind of curious about the other books because I did read the synopsis for all of those, and I really liked the characters that were in here that are gonna have their own book. So against better judgment, I will. But just know I despise this one. Moving on, I read Sealed with a Yuletide Kiss by Sophie Barnes, which I gave 2 out of 5 stars, and it's a category from NetGalley. This is a short story collection, and basically is meant to serve as an advent calendar, where it's just like one historical romance short story for each day to read up until Christmas. And that's what I did, and I had a really fun time doing that. And this was the first time I've ever encountered even the concept of this. The author had like an author at the beginning that she grew up with these kinds of books, where it was just like a short story as like an advent calendar rather than like the typical like chocolate ones or toy ones. And I really liked the concept. I liked getting to read a story every day, and just like any typical advent calendar, there are days I forgot, so I got to read a couple of stories some days. And yeah, I thought that experience was a lot of fun, and I do think there were a lot of fun stories in here, but I think overall the collection kind of lacked from having so many stories in such a small page count, because I believe it is under 300 pages. So all over this, like there's 24 stories in here, so they're all like very short, and I feel like we never really there are a couple of stories like I generally felt an attachment to and I really loved, but there were also a lot of ones that were just felt like I want like 2 pages more, just like a little bit more. And because there were so many stories, I also feel like there were so many tropes or ideas that were like reused, and when you're at the end of the collection and you've seen a trope that was done like 50 other times, not 50, that's impossible, but like 5 other times in this collection, you're kind of like, oh, here we are again. Like, it's, I don't know, I got a bit bored reading it as well, but overall it's a fun idea. I had fun reading it. Well, the next book I read is A Scoundrel of Her Own by Stacy Reid, which I gave 2 out of 5 stars. I was like, it's another character from NetGalley, it's another historical romance. And this one, I forgot the character's name, so this is going to be very fun. We follow this girl and this guy is, like, the girl is from nobility, the guy isn't, as working class. And as children, like, he rescued her, and like they spent a couple of days, weeks, I don't know the exact time frame, like being lost in the woods, and then they formed a real friendship and connection doing that. But of course, once they were found, they were like ripped apart and like didn't see each other again. But he has made this mission to kind of become worthy of her over time, so he has really put in the work to become rich and powerful and have this name, like make a name for himself. And then several years later we see them re-meeting as she learns that she is actually kind of like the illegitimate child to her father, because her mother isn't actually her mother. Elle actually was a opera singer, I believe. So she is trying to find out who that woman is, trying to make a connection with her to kind of like rediscover this part of herself. And that's, well, because she has to go like in more the dark parts of towns, that's when she comes across this guy again, and he immediately recognizes her, she doesn't. But the first time they have like a proper meeting, he does reveal to her that he's the person from her childhood, which I appreciated. Yeah, it's basically a romance between them. I explained it terribly, I apologize, but I quite like this romance. Like I said in the synopsis, I really appreciated that it was upon like their first like proper meeting, he is like, hi, I am the guy who saved you all these years ago. And I really appreciated that, because I do have this style in romances where I don't really like it when there's like 2 like different identities for each person, I guess, and then like one person knows that these two identities are the same person, but like the other person doesn't. I think that causes conflict that I don't really like, and I really liked that this book didn't do that, even though like I was afraid it would. I also quite liked how they both acknowledge like still having this like connection between them from when they were kids, but also kind of like re-flirting and re-falling for each, like not re-flirting because they didn't flirt as kids, it's ridiculous, but like flirting with each other and like exploring that sexual attraction between them and falling in love really, and not just purely going off, well I loved him as a kid so I can love them now exactly the same. I also quite liked the commentary that was made on like classism on this time and like class differences. I really liked it. I really liked how attracted to each other. I really could believe their chemistry, and I really liked their romance. I also quite liked the journey of like finding the female main character's mother. I thought that was really well done as well. It just, I ended up giving it 2.5 stars because I do feel like at times this one dragged a little and it could feel a little bit repetitive in like its social commentary moments, because it went on and on and on, and it was just like, we already talked about this a couple of chapters ago, we don't need to talk about it again in the exact same way. And that just made it kind of like a slog to read. The next book I read is Kate in Waiting by Becky Albertalli, which I gave 5 stars. I really love this. This one follows Kate, obviously, and she and her best friend Anderson have kind of always had crushes on the same people. There were a few times that didn't happen, it turned out terribly, so they really have kind of have like this unofficial rule where they only really have crushes on guys if the other person also has a crush on that guy. And it's always been like people they like barely know, they just like see from afar, so it's never really been a problem. And this summer their crush is this guy from camp who they interact with a couple of times, but not really, they're kind of like on the outside of it. And then school starts again, and turns out Matt has moved and is now also going to their school, and is also of course very into theater just like they are, so they becoming friends and come on close contact with this person. And it's kind of going into uncharted territory for both of them, where they have to navigate both having a crush on this guy, like generally starting to fall for him, but also not wanting to ruin the friendship that's between them. I really love this, and honestly I bought this like right when it came out, and I haven't read it, which is because I was scared that this was going to disappoint me, because Becky Albertalli's books have always had like huge hype around their releases. This one didn't really, at least not in the circles that I am in, so I was kind of scared for this one. But it delivered. It 100% delivered, at least for me. I know Becky Albertalli is not an author that's for everyone, but for some reason she always knows the exact tropes I love, and she does them fantastically, so I'm not complaining about this. I read this in a reading vlog where I read 2021 releases I own but haven't read yet. That's in the eye above somewhere and in the description again for you to check out. I'm really glad the video made me pick this one up, because I really loved it. I thought Kate was an amazing character to follow. I really liked following her. I also really loved her friendship with Anderson, because even though this sounds like a love triangle story, it is, but it mainly focuses on like the friendship between Kate and Anderson and how this situation is affecting their friendship. And I really loved how that was done, how even in the more difficult moments they still had this love for each other and that was never in question. I really appreciated that. I also really loved the theater setting in this book. I thought it was a fun way to frame the story, because we started with like the announcement of what the musical is going to be for the semester, and then we have auditions and rehearsals, and we end with premiere night. And I really loved how that like framed the story and how the characters like lived to each moment. And I also loved the discussions that Kate and her friends had around theater, and where for each of them their passion lies within it, because even though they're all obsessed with musical, they all have like different interests in it, I guess. And I really loved the discussions around those things. So next up, I read The Widower Plaid by Jenna and Jaxon, which I gave 1.5 stars, and is a guide from NetGalley. Basically, we follow this woman who she and her friends like have this club because all of their husbands died in a war. I don't remember which one. Basically, the whole series like follows each different woman as they fall in love, and our female main character has kind of had these flirtations with this, I believe it's a duke, but I could be wrong. but like with this titled gentleman, and he's been trying to propose to her time and time again, and she hasn't really been receptive to it, as she's scared of losing her like freedoms as a widow, because just in this time as a widow you had more freedom than as a married woman. She didn't want to lose his freedoms. And then at a certain point she was like, at one of the proposals was like, if you're gonna propose to me, I'm like gonna run away, I'm not gonna be around you anymore. That makes him stop, and at the beginning of the book, like all her friends come around for like an event, and she's like, I'm scared, like I scared him off, that like he won't be interested in me anymore. And yeah, that's the start of like the romance. But then also once they have decided to like be engaged, like badness goes down around them, and it's not great. I found this book incredibly hard to follow, which is why I'm terrible at explaining this book, because I had a hard time just like following the story, and I feel like there were often like details introduced that I'm like discarded entirely. Like at a certain point that like this conversation of like when their engagement, it's very much in the beginning. I don't know why it's in the synopsis like it's gonna take a while, because it's like in the first couple of chapter where they actually get engaged, but they have their engagement and they discuss wanting to marry as quickly as possible. But also one of the characters, I don't remember which one, mentions that they have a sister and that they want to wait a little so that they can like send an invitation to that sister. So even though like they're estranged, like she can still make a decision to come or not to come. Like she'll have that possibility, so they want to wait. And then a couple of chapters further in the book, they're like, let's get married in a couple of days, while not having sent off a notice to that sister. So I am very confused throughout all of this. I found the plot just very hard to follow. Even besides that, I found the characters very hard to keep track of. I feel like they weren't given a personality, and this is the last book in a woman's series, so maybe it was my fault to not read all the previous ones. But I still feel like you should have a personality, at least for your main characters, which I definitely don't have that, because I couldn't distinguish a single character from each other. And I was so confused, especially because this is a thing in historical romances in general. You have like the titles and then like their actual names, and they're like used interchangeably like by different characters. Like some characters will refer to this character with a title and other with a name, just regarding the closeness of them, and this makes it so much more difficult to keep track of characters when there's just like zero personality. The next book I read this month was An Emotion of Great Delight by Tahereh Mafi, which gave 2 out of 5 stars. And this one again is a difficult one to explain because there isn't much of a plot. There is much more like character focused and like a character dealing with events. But basically this book takes place in December 2003, and our main character has had a difficult year previously, a lot of shit happening to her, and she's kind of trying to like suppress all of it and not deal with the emotions of what has happened. And now like just little things are happening that keep bringing the events of the past year to the forefront and like force her to deal with everything. And I feel complex about this. Again, this was a book I read in that reading vlog of 2021 releases. I had a difficult time with this book because I do think there was a lot of interesting things introduced in here. A lot of interesting discussions, but I feel like they didn't lead anywhere. Also, the way this was written was really interesting, and I get why the decision was done, even though I didn't really necessarily like it. But basically, our main character is kind of like in this haze state where she is like constantly like kind of not really present, and there will be a moment where she is kind of like stuck in a flashback, and all of a sudden like a person in real time is talking to her, and those like changes can feel abrupt because I get where those decisions were made, because the main character isn't present. She's stuck in what happened last year, and like her emotions of that and not processing properly. I totally get why that decision was made, but it was made for a very confusing read where I just had a hard time sometimes distinguishing flashback from present. And also there was a lot of times where there would be like someone start talking to her, and like we wouldn't like nowhere would it ever say who is talking, like who the person is that got introduced into the scene, and we just kind of had to like figure that out based on like the conversation, how that went, and be like, oh yeah, okay, they referenced this, so that must mean that's that character. And I get what it was. It's difficult to talk about this by yourself because I get why that decision was made. It very much shows the reader what this character is going through and what her mental state is. I understand that, but it made for such an incredible confusing read that I feel like I was detached from what was happening, and I didn't really like, I didn't get invested in it as much as I would like to. Next up, we have Birdie's Billions by Edith Cohn. Edith Cohn. I totally mispronounced that, I'm so sorry. I gave it 2 to 5 stars, and there's a guy from Magali. This is a middle grade novel about Birdie, who and her mom have always kind of like lived in like not poverty, but like also not super rich. And at the beginning of this book, like they've recently moved to this other town, and at the beginning of this book, like Birdie like accidentally does something that gets her mom fired at her job, and now they're like in very much in need of financial support, and Birdie just happens to stumble upon like this big pile of money that was actually hidden away by criminals. She didn't know that when she found it, and she has been trying to like get it to her mom inconspicuously so that they can live a better life. But there was also like this looming threat, I guess, of having like discovering that this money comes from an illegal place. Yeah, I kind of have again mixed opinions about this book because I feel like it tried to do a lot of things and didn't necessarily succeed at it for me. I feel like a lot of the messaging in this book was either like kind of where you're like on the bottom line, like, is this great messaging or not? And also other messages just felt like shoehorned in. On top of that, I feel like there were some moments again that were like dragged out a little bit, and I feel like could have been condensed a little because I was a little bit bored at times. But for the rest, I do think this was a fun novel. I really like Birdie as a character. I like that she wasn't super likable. She did a lot of wrong things, but like she learned throughout the book, and she never does them out of malicious intent. I also quite like how this discussed classism and didn't really like shy away from that conversation, because I feel like it's very easy to sugarcoat that conversation when it comes to a middle grade novel, but in reality like kids this age are facing classism. Like honestly, snobby rich people don't give a shit if a kid is 12. They'll still shit on them for not having enough money, and that sucks. So I really like how this book like didn't really shy away from that. And then last but definitely not least, A For Aunties by Jessie Q. Sutanto. I gave this 5 to 5 stars. I love this so much. And in this one, we follow I'm gonna keep this on my lap. I need light. Okay. This one we follow Maddie Shan, who has this wedding business with her mom and her 2 aunts, who she's like super close with. They have this business together, and they're about to have this super important wedding in this weekend. But the day before it, Maddie is sent on a blind date by her mom, and this blind date ends up going away, and she accidentally ends up killing the guy, which accidentally also rhymed. So now she has to enlist help of her aunts and her mom to hide the body, while also still having this high priority wedding that needs to go on, and no one can notice what happened. And to make things even more complicated, the wedding is being held at a hotel that is run by her ex, who she never really got over. And yeah, it's so good. Just on the premise, you would think this is a pretty dark book, but it's not. It's so funny and so lighthearted, and I feel like this manages to do that by not taking itself seriously, because there's definitely some times where like characters' decisions or reactions don't seem realistic, but because this book never at any point takes itself seriously and calls out its ridiculousness, it makes sense, and you don't question things too much, and you just like go along with things. And I really loved that. I had a blast reading this book. I laughed so much, and generally I think like the funniest book I've read this year. I really loved Maddie as a main character. I really loved her mother and her aunts as well. I think they made for a very like fun cast of side characters. I thought that was really funny. I really loved their family dynamic. They were so close and they loved each other so much, and even though they did fight a lot, it all came from like a place of love and respect for them each other still, and I really liked that. I also really loved the wedding hijinks in this, because you know it takes place at a wedding, so besides them just having to try to hide a body, there's still like the typical wedding things that go on, and I really loved how that was used throughout it as well. Is also a Chinese Indonesian wedding, so I really had a great time like learning about some of these traditions that I didn't know of. And on top of that, there's also a romance in here, obviously, which is like the least important bit in this entire book, but I still really liked it. I really liked the chemistry that they had. This book is divided in a couple of parts, and the first part is kind of like dual timeline, like present day and also like flashbacks to the relationship that Maddie had with this guy, and I feel like those flashbacks really like lay the foundation for this relationship well, where I understand why they broke up, but I also can fully get behind them getting back together again. And that's it for today. It's gotten darker outside, in case you can't tell. If you couldn't tell, now you can. This has been way long. I think this is like the longest wrap up I've ever done after having done the wrap up already, so I apologize, but like in the last week of December I just kind of felt wild when we did. I don't know what happened, so yeah, I still hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment below if you've had any books, what you thought of them yourself, some of the books you read in December, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Good, bye.